Hi there, everyone, and welcome to The Daily Gardener. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling. It's the 2nd of April. What are you curious about in your garden? What are you hoping to learn this season? You might be signed up for something you didn't plan to learn. Maybe you've always been a flower gardener, but then somehow you discover the joy of growing garlic. Last year, you grew your own tomatoes to great success. This season might be less than stellar. Maybe you didn't like pulling weeds as a kid for your mom, but now she's gone, and you suddenly want to have a garden of your own. Our gardens are classrooms, and those classrooms are filled with many teachers, or Upah Gurus. Upah Guru is the Hindu word for the teacher next to you at any moment. The Upah Gurus in your garden this year might be the seeds you just ordered, a mystery plant you inherited, the hydrangea that refuses to flower, the rose that won't give up. One of the things that can happen to gardeners is that we can focus on the teacher, not the teaching. But what if this season your mindset is simply to be a good student? You don't need to get straight A's in the garden. No one is putting that pressure on you but yourself. You're simply there to learn, to focus on the teaching, because the teaching is what makes us better gardeners. Here are today's brevities. Today we remember a phenomenal woman, Sibylla Merian. She was born April 2nd, 1647. And just to put that in perspective for you, Isaac Newton was only a few years older than her. Unlike Newton, Merian's work was largely forgotten. But over the past century, her work has made its way to us. Why? Because Merian has the it factor. In 2011, Janet Daly, a retired teacher and artist from Springfield, Illinois, became so captivated by Merian's life story that she started a Kickstarter campaign to follow Merian's footsteps to the mecca of her best work, Suriname. And in 2013, Merian's birthday was commemorated with a Google Doodle. Merian would have delighted in our modern-day effort to plant milkweed for the monarchs. The concept that insects and plants are inextricably bound together was not lost on Merian. In her work, she carefully noted which caterpillars were the specialists, meaning they ate only one kind of plant. You can relate to that concept if your kid only wants to eat mac and cheese. Hey, they're not being picky, they're being specialists. Before all of this social media and high tech, drawings like Merian's were a holy grail for plant identification. One look at her work, and Linnaeus knew immediately it was brilliant. She helped classify nearly 100 different species long after she was gone from the earth. To this day, scientists acknowledge that the accuracy in her art is so good that they can identify many of her butterflies and moths right down to the species level. Between 1716 and 1717, the final year of her life, Merian was visited multiple times by her friend and artist Georg Gesell and his friend Peter the Great. Oh, to be a fly on the wall for that meetup. Gesell ended up marrying Merian's youngest daughter, and Peter the Great ended up with 256 paintings. In fact, Peter the Great so loved all of these pieces that when Merian died, he immediately sent an agent back to buy all of her remaining watercolors and bring them home to St. Petersburg. Here's a fun story for you. On the Sibylla Merian Society website, they feature a video that shows Redmond O'Hanlon, a writer, flipping through an original Merian folio. Now, O'Hanlon is a scholar and explorer himself. He's been all over the world. But at one point in the video, he becomes speechless. And then he just lets out this big sigh, and he finally says, "It's so simple. Without the slightest doubt, she was the greatest painter of plants and insects who ever lived." I mean, just between you and me, she's the greatest woman who ever lived. You can keep Catherine the Great. Maria Sibylla Merian is the real heroine of our civilized time. Wow. I thought it would be fun for you to hear how Merian described a pineapple. This is a ripe pineapple, which must be peeled to be eaten. The fruit tastes as though one had mixed grapes, apricots, red currants, apples, and pears, and were able to taste them all at once. The caterpillar, which sits on this pineapple, I found in the grass beside the pineapples in 1700 at the beginning of May. On May 10th, it changed into a chrysalis, and on May 18th, a very beautiful butterfly emerged. And then she does what Merian does best. She went on to describe in great detail everything about this butterfly. All right, on this day in 1513, Juan Ponce de Leon claims new land for Spain. He names his discovery Florida in a nod to the Easter season, which the Spaniards called Pascua Florida, or Festival of Flowers. In 1819, the first successful agricultural journal, American Farmer, is published in Baltimore. And today, in 1711, Jacob Boster was born. Boster was one of the first Dutch nature researchers to use a microscope to look at flora and fauna. He acquired a beautiful property loaded with trees and 2 large ponds. He called it Zonhof, or Sunshine Farms. And as a new pond owner, he decided to try his hand at breeding goldfish. He exchanged letters with leading biologists of his time, and then, thanks to a contact in England, the first 12 fish arrive. Unfortunately, they all die, but the following year, he gets 18 more fish. 2 die, the rest survive. 13 years later, Boster owned more than 1,000 goldfish. And that's Job Boster, the man who introduced goldfish to the Dutch. For my book recommendation today, researching Merian led me to the poet Alison Funk's fantastic book, Wonder Rooms. In Wonder Rooms, Funk has a series of 8 poems called Maria Sibylla Merian's Metamorphosis. Each poem captures moments in Merian's life, and the poems are nested like Russian dolls. The first poem is nested in the second poem, and the second poem is nested in the third, and so on. Today's to-do is to get your irrigation system set up. Order the parts you like to use and frequently need to replace, new emitters, maybe some misters for your garden visitors. And don't forget that when it comes to irrigation, your ears, not your eyes, can help you sleuth out leaks. After you turn your system on for the first time, walk around each zone and listen for gurgles and bubbles, the sound of running water. You'll often hear it before you see it. So listen up. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener. And remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day. The Daily Gardener is produced weekdays in lovely Maple Grove, Minnesota. You can find complete show notes over at thedailygardener.org. And be sure to share the show with your garden friends. You can find The Daily Gardener on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And while you're over at Facebook, don't forget to join the Daily Gardener community. Just search for The Daily Gardener Community on Facebook and request to join. And finally, a special thank you to my team at Podfly Productions, where my editor is Eric Begay.